extremist groups will continue to exploit the vacuums that are there in Syria to expand their operations, which will include, no question, attacks against Russian interests, perhaps even Russian cities. And Russia will continue to send troops home in body bags. Here at the State Department, the Secretary is still committed to a diplomatic solution. There are other options that don't revolve around the act of diplomacy.
Looking at the events that followed the ceasefire, how is it fair to say that Russia is solely responsible for the failure of this deal?
Because, and we've said this many, many times, they have influence on Assad. I didn't make that up.
Are you saying that you don't have influence with the rebels?
We do, and so do some of our allies and partners as well.
And if the U.S. does have influence with these rebel groups, why the hundreds of ceasefire violations? Why did that happen?
We have influence over some, not all. We have there are
largest rebel group just refused to abide by that deal.
There are other nations that have influence, and again, we have admitted that not all the opposition groups on every single day completely abided by it.
Can you admit that part of the responsibility for the failure of this deal lies with the rebels and with the U.S.?
I think we've been nothing but honest about the fact that there have been violations of the ceasefire and the cessation of hostilities on all sides.
The U.S. has expressed grave concern over what Saudi Arabia is doing in Yemen by hitting civilian targets there. Why isn't the U.S. threatening to cut ties with Saudi Arabia?
We have, the Secretary talked about this when we were in Jeddah a few weeks ago. We have been honest with the Saudis about our concerns over the lack of precision in some strikes, and we've talked to them about the importance of conducting investigations.
But Saudi Arabia is doing there what Russia is accused of doing in Syria. So
No.
How is that consistent?
Because what we're seeing the Russians do, and I would love to see you ask your government some of these questions. You know, Russia today never does that. You never poke and prod your own government.
We are learning that Syrian rebels have received, quote-unquote, excellent quantities of surface-to-surface Grad missiles from, quote-unquote, foreign states. Actually, this is from a Reuters article. I was quoting a Reuters article. Considering how intertwined some of these rebel groups are with al-Nusra, specifically in Aleppo, how long do you think before these powerful weapons end up in the hands of terrorists?
I couldn't possibly begin to answer that question. I can't confirm the veracity of that press reporting.
Reports of at least one major explosion in the metro system in the city of St. Petersburg. It is very, very chaotic and a fluid situation right now. There are reports of multiple deaths and injuries, and the Russian President Vladimir Putin saying they are considering all causes, including terrorism. NBC's Carlo Aguilera is live in our Moscow bureau monitoring the latest developments. Carlo, what exactly, and I know it's fluid, do you believe happened?
Hi, good morning, Stephanie. So as you said, the situation is very fluid at the moment still. What the Russian government has said, and this is a statement that just came in from the Russian Anti-Terrorist Committee, is that they have confirmed that a blast took place at about 2:40 p.m. in the afternoon in one of the carriages in St. Petersburg. That's around 7:40 a.m. Eastern Time in the U.S. Now, this Anti-Terrorism Committee has not confirmed a number of dead or injured, but one of the state news agencies here in Russia reports that at least 10 people have been killed and multiple people have probably been injured. But so far, there are no clear numbers here from the Russian government. The president, Vladimir Putin, he has been informed about the situation, and he said they are looking into all possible causes of what could have triggered that explosion. Vladimir Putin was actually in St. Petersburg today, meeting with his Belarusian counterpart there. So the Kremlin says he will closely monitor the situation.
And what is Russian media saying? Are they jumping to any conclusions just yet around who could be behind this?
No, at the moment, even on Russian media here, they are saying that this situation at the scene is still very unclear, and they're not yet jumping to any conclusions Now we have to, actually one of the last major attacks here in Russia was back in 2013, so quite a couple of years ago, right before the Sochi Olympics. And that was an explosion in Volgograd, actually 2 explosions within 2 days in Volgograd, killing about 34 people at the time, near a train station there. But the situation in St. Petersburg is still very unclear and no conclusions from Russia yet.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.
The following report contains some disturbing images.
This is some of the footage opposition activists posted online after the attack on the town of Khan Sheikhoun. Medical sources told the monitoring group, the Syrian Observatory of Human Rights, that the symptoms, the difficulty breathing, the foaming at the mouth, were consistent with a gas attack. Witnesses talk about people choking and fainting after the early morning airstrike. Other pictures, too graphic to broadcast, show what appear to be the semi-naked bodies of the dead, many of them children. Some reports describe people taking victims' clothes off and hosing them with water to try to help them.
The symptoms that we witnessed are different than symptoms of chlorine gas. All the victims who arrived had neural stress and yellow saliva coming out of their mouths. And very soon blood started coming out of their mouths too, which means that their lungs are damaged.
This area in the northwest of Syria has been under heavy bombardment by pro-government forces. It's controlled by a range of opposition groups, including jihadists linked to al-Qaeda and Free Syrian Army fighters. There's been no official response from the Syrian government to the claim of a gas attack. They've repeatedly denied using such weapons in the past. A political opposition group has called for a UN investigation into today's attack. Ben James, BBC News, Beirut.